Hello everyone, I'm Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IAS English. In our today's video, we'll try to understand why is India wanting to become the part of International Energy Agency. Okay, now the reason why we have picked up International Energy Agency for our today's discussion, because recently the annual ministerial meeting of this organization happened in its headquarters in Paris, and in this meeting they have welcomed the progress that has been made to include India as a full-fledged member of the IEA. Now India's request to become a part of IEA as a full member is easier said than done. Why is it so? We'll discuss in our today's video. Now, what you have to understand that the notes which I will be using in our today's session, they are very important from your exams perspective. So what you can do is go to a Telegram channel called as ATS Live and download them, because you can revise it later on. And while you're at it downloading the notes, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel also. So let us start our today's discussion by understanding the evolution of IEA, because only then we'll be able to understand how would India fit in this organization scheme of things. Now, first, there was a global oil crisis that happened in 1973. And what was the trigger of this global oil crisis? It was because major Arab oil producing countries, they imposed an embargo on the sale of oil and crude oil especially to the countries who they believed had supported Israel in the Yom Kippur War of the year 1973. Now, this embargo, which was mostly imposed on Western developed countries, it created a scenario where the prices of fuel skyrocketed. And not just that, there was also massive fuel scarcity that was seen in countries like US. So what you have to understand, these are the major industrial countries who at that time were also one of the largest consumers of oil. So they did not know how to respond. They just believed what just happened. So as a result, they saw that they had, in the past decade, they had created an organization known as Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. So these organizations, and the countries belonging to these organizations, they sat together and decided that we need to do something in order to reduce or manage their dependence on oil imports. And as a result, in the year 1974, they created, out of 17 OECD countries, they created an organization later called as the International Energy Agency. Now, naturally, International Energy Agency presently does not contain 17 countries only. It has expanded its membership. Now, the original mandate of International Energy Agency was to ensure that the oil supplies were kept stable. And if there is a potential disruption which might happen in future, they would be ready to anticipate this disruption and they would prevent it through timely action. So one of the mechanisms that they designed, if that any country wants to become the part of IEA, they would have to mandatorily keep certain minimum strategic reserves of oil which can be liquidated in order to neutralize any disruption in the supply of crude oil. Similarly, they also impose certain other conditions on any country who would want to become members of IEA. One is that they need to keep 90 days worth of oil reserve. Second is that whenever a country wants to become the part of IEA, they would ensure that their national oil consumption reduces by 10%. So not just they would have few stocks in handy, they would also want to become more efficient when it comes to usage of oil. Similarly, they would create legislative and system accordances so that to make any emergency response possible, and they would also make sure the mandatory reporting done for energy consumptions from their companies. So all of this collective action was meant to ensure that any global crisis happens in the future, they would be ready to respond, right? And as a result, gradually, the size of IEA in terms of its member countries increase. Now, what you have to understand, all of those countries who became the part of IEA, they were also the members of OECD before. So presently, they have 32 full members. And in the last week ministerial conference only, the 33rd member, that was Colombia, was inducted as a full-fledged member of IEA. Now, why was this possible? How was Colombia made a member of IEA? It was only possible because back in 2020, Colombia also became a part of OECD. So you understand, to become a part of IEA, you need to be a member of OECD and you need to fulfill the conditions that I showed you in the previous slide. Now let us understand why IEA needs further expansion and how does India comes into the picture. Now in 2015, IEA realized that there are many major consumers of oil like India, like China, like Brazil. They are not officially the part of OECD. So they created a mechanism where they could become a part and parcel in their policy discussions and activities, and at the same time they would not have voting rights in the organization, and this was given as the status of associate members. So presently there are 13 associate members right now, which includes India, which became the part of IEA as an associate member, not a full-fledged member, in 2017. And other major oil producers countries, like oil consumer countries, like China, South Africa, Indonesia, Egypt, Brazil, they are also part of IEA as associate members. Now India naturally has given its acceptance to become a part of IEA, and this is because of the evolution that is happening in the role of IEA. Now IEA in 1970 started as an organization which wanted to expand energy production, but gradually when the world faced problems like climate change, the world faced problems like overuse of fossil fuels, there became a need to diversify the energy sources and also introduction of newer technologies in order to make consumption of oil more efficient. And that is why the IEA role has also expanded. IEA now not just concerns itself with every provision related to crude oil, but it also deals with other energy sources, including the renewable energy. So for example, presently matters like climate change, matters like decarbonization, matters like energy transition also falls under the jurisdiction of IEA. Similarly, recently they've also launched a critical minerals program. So what does this show you? This shows you that the role of IEA has graduated more than that concerning itself with oil. It has become a part and parcel of IEA to deal with matters relating to climate change, decarbonization, and also the adoption of newer technologies by countries so as to reduce their dependence on crude oil. And that is why India puts in a major picture. Now the energy production and consumption landscape across the world has changed majorly. Now specifically countries like India, China and Brazil, they are not a part of OECD, and that is why not a full-fledged member of IEA, but they are also one of the major consumers of oil in the world. Now when IEA was set up, its constituents resulted into 60% of total global energy demand. But despite expansion to include more than 30 countries, presently the full-fledged members of IEA, they only account for 40% of the global energy demand. And if you take into account even the associate members as well, then IEA caters to more than 80% of global energy demand. So what does it mean? That IEA wants to include more associate members by giving them the full-fledged membership, and this is where India's role plays a very important part. First of all, India needs to, or India wants to have a role which would allow it to make or participate in major decision-making process as far as energy governance is concerned. And this is the interest why India wants to become a part of IEA. And it sent a formal request back in 2023 to allow IEA do the same to them. Now, IEA presently, or what is there for India if it becomes the part of IEA, that we need to understand. Now, IEA presently, it deals with energy related emergencies, but in addition to that, IEA also focuses on creating useful knowledge platform which would help its member countries deal with energy transition, deals with the impact of climate change, and also improve their clean energy technology so as to reduce their dependence on crude oil. And at the same time, they've played an increasing influence role in guiding the energy policies. So this is why India wants to become a part of IEA. Now, I told you at the start, making India part of IEA is easier said than done, because as we have understood, IEA expansion has happened for only those countries who were already the part of OECD, or they have joined OECD later to become the part of IEA. So India presently is not a part of IEA, so that is why, or it's not a part of OECD also, so that is why IEA would require to amend its founding charter, because India has seen or has shown no inclination to become a part of OECD. So either IEA would have to amend its eligibility criteria or would have to make an exception for India, just like the Western countries did for India not to become a part of NSC, right? Now here, what is the importance of India for IEA, that we also need to understand. First, in the next 3 decades, you can understand India presently, which is the world's most populous country, its energy demand is going to skyrocket. And the reason behind this skyrocketing energy demand is increase in per capita income. The consequence of increase in per capita income is that you have to provide more jobs through industrialization, and that would also lead to surge in urbanization levels of wealth. So because of these factors, because of growing population, their aspirations, their energy demand, your energy demand would skyrocket. So if you have to cater to efforts relating to safeguarding energy security, if you have to drive inclusive energy transition, if you have to combat the menace of climate change, you can't do so without the active participation of India. And this is what is the essential requirement of IEA is for India. Now, this can also be seen with increasing participation of IEA in India's energy governance, because in past few years we have seen in IEA's engagement with India has also increased, and this can be seen by publication of several India-centric reports that the IEA did. For example, IEA published a live report which was called as Lifestyle for Environment Initiative. Now, this initiative, which was a study done by IEA, it revealed that adoption of simple lifestyle changes can lead to saving of global emission by as much as 2 billion tons by 2030. So this is why there is an important role of India as far as IEA is concerned. Now we'll solve a question that is directly linked to the kinds of question that appears in UPSC exam. But before that, there is an important announcement. The subject that we dealt with right now is a part of international relations subject, right? But besides international relations, there are other important subjects in UPSC as well. For example, polity, economy, geography, history, security, ethics, etc. To get acquainted and get knowledge in all these subjects, you can take admission in resolution batches. In resolution batches, we ensure that each and every subject is catered to individually, and not just that, you get one-to-one mentorship test series which will help you throughout your UPSC journey. Now, this is the question that a kind of question that is asked in the UPSC exam. The energy technology perspective is published by which of the following organization? Now, to be able to solve this question, you need an additional information. The additional information is what kind of publications or what kind of reports are generally published by international energy agency. So I've put a list: World Energy Outlook, World Energy Balances, Energy Technology Perspective, and World Energy Statistics and Net Zero by 2050 are the reports published by IEA. So please ensure to remember these reports and note down somewhere before you appear in the prelims examination, right? And try to solve the question which I showed you. And if you want to download the notes, this is where it would be available. The channel's name is called as ATS Live. So this is all from my side for today. Please have a very good night, and we'll see each other again quite soon.